Millionaire married a plus-size woman for a bet what she did left him speechless. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have one small request. Please click the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you will not miss our newest videos. It only takes a second, it is completely free, and it is the best way to support us in bringing you more heartfelt, meaningful stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Tell us your city or country in the comments below. Thank you so much. Coming next. He thought it was only a game until she walked in. Let us return to our main character. The chandeliers burned like small suns over the ballroom of the Astoria Grand. Laughter floated above the music, layered with the clinking of glass and the hiss of champagne poured into waiting flutes. Every corner glowed with wealth, crystal, velvet, and confidence polished to a shine. In the middle of it all stood Ethan Cole, the youngest CEO on Wall Street to hit $1 billion before 35. Tall, composed, the kind of man who smiled only when he was winning. Tonight, he was celebrating another merger, another victory. People surrounded him, eager to orbit his light. Compliments, deals, promises. It was a chorus he'd heard his entire life. But Ethan barely listened. He raised his glass, nodded politely, and drifted toward the balcony. The city stretched beneath him like a circuit board of gold. He loved that view. Everything below him, everything under control. Ethan, a smooth voice called from behind. Ryan Blake, his oldest friend and occasional rival, stepped out from the crowd, a grin slicing across his face. You win at everything, Ryan said. Stocks, strategy, charm. You never lose, not even once. Ethan smirked. That's what practice does. Ryan's grin deepened. Maybe it's time you found a game you can't win. The challenge hung in the air, sharp as broken glass. A few guests nearby turned. Their curiosity instantly piqued. Ethan faced him fully. And what game would that be? Marriage, Ryan said simply, letting the word roll like a dare. Real marriage, to someone you wouldn't even look at twice. Laughter rippled around them, quick and cruel. The women exchanged glances. The men leaned closer, entertained. Ethan's jaw tightened for a second, then he laughed too. You think I couldn't? Ryan raised his brows. I think you wouldn't. You're too proud. Ethan's eyes gleamed. And what's in it for me? Ryan reached into his jacket, pulled out a small silver ring, and set it on the glass table between them. The metal caught the light, spinning once before coming to rest. $1 million, Ryan said. 6 months of marriage. If you last, you win. The room stilled. Champagne fizzed in someone's hand. Ethan stared at the ring, simple, unadorned, shining cold under the chandelier. He could feel every eye on him, waiting for his reaction. He picked it up, turning it slowly between his fingers. The metal felt cool, deliberate. And if I lose? He asked. Ryan's grin sharpened. Then, for the first time, Ethan Cole loses something money can't buy. Ethan's smile returned, precise and unshaken. Deal. The crowd erupted applause, laughter, disbelief. Ryan clapped him on the back, half in admiration, half in warning. To the bet, someone toasted. Glasses clinked, the sound echoing like distant thunder. Ethan slipped the silver ring into his pocket, feeling the weight settle against his chest. It wasn't love or destiny, just another challenge. Another chance to prove that no emotion, no risk, no person could ever unseat his control. He looked out at the city once more, the lights trembling like reflections on water. Beyond those towers, somewhere in that sprawling maze of lives, a woman he hadn't met yet was living her quiet truth, unaware that her name would soon be chosen. Her life rewritten, her heart tested against his pride. He didn't know it yet, but this game would be the last one he'd ever play. Because when love finally walked into his world, it wouldn't come to flatter him. It would come to humble him. He was born in victory. Ethan Cole had never known what losing felt like. From prep school debates to boardroom takeovers, everything he touched turned into a triumph, polished and profitable. He didn't chase approval, he expected it. Even as a child, he learned that applause came easier than affection, and money solved silence faster than love ever could. By 35, he had more than most men dared to want: private jets, properties, a name whispered with envy. Yet every success left a hollow ring, like champagne gone flat. To him, winning wasn't joy anymore. It was oxygen. He dated women sculpted by filters and expectations. Perfect smiles, perfect skin, perfect lies. They admired his power, but feared his eyes. Every dinner ended with a photo. Every kiss tasted of strategy. None of them ever asked how he was because they already knew the answer. Untouchable. Marriage, to Ethan, was no different from a contract, 2 signatures, shared assets, and a countdown to boredom. Love was a word poor people used to justify compromise. But the bet with Ryan Blake, this was different. It wasn't just a dare thrown over champagne. It was a mirror pointed at his pride. He remembered Ryan's smirk from the night before. You can't survive 6 months with a woman who doesn't fit your world. The sentence stung longer than he'd admit. Ethan couldn't resist a challenge, especially one that questioned his control. This wasn't about desire, it was about dominance, about proving that nothing, not even love, could shake him. His phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. "Found your bride." Ethan frowned, opening the link. A photograph appeared grainy but vivid. A woman stood in front of a group of children in a small art studio. Her hair was tied in a loose bun, her shirt splattered with color, her smile open and real. She wasn't model thin or polished. She looked alive. Khloe Richards, 28. Art teacher. Community volunteer. He zoomed in, scanning the details. The way she leaned toward the kids, not to perform but to connect. The soft curve of her body, the quiet confidence in her stance. She was plus size, radiant without trying, utterly unaware of her own effect. Ryan's next message followed. She runs free art classes for kids who can't afford them. Says beauty isn't about symmetry. Sounds like your opposite, doesn't she? Ethan typed back. Too ordinary. Ryan replied. Exactly. He stared at her picture longer than he wanted to. There was something unsettling about her calm. No pretense, no need to impress. Just authenticity, a language he hadn't spoken in years. Her name echoed through his mind. Khloe Richards. He found a quote linked to her school's fundraiser. Women don't have to be beautiful to be respected. He read it twice, the words pressing against something old inside him. Respect, a word he used in boardrooms, never in hearts. He set the phone down, poured a drink, and stared out at the skyline. This was supposed to be fun, a bet, a statement, another victory to frame on his wall of conquests. Yet the air felt heavier than usual, the silence sharper. I'll meet her, win the game, prove the point, he thought. But as the city lights flickered below, a quieter thought slipped through the cracks. What if this time, the price of winning is everything I never learned to feel? The restaurant glowed like a glass jewel above the city. Crystal chandeliers shimmered against tall windows, violins whispered in the corner, and every table hummed with quiet wealth. Ethan Cole sat alone, his cufflinks gleaming, his patience thinning. He had chosen this place for a reason control. Everything here spoke his language. Precision, power, perfection. The maitre approached. Mr. Cole, your guest has arrived. Ethan looked up. Khloe Richards walked in, not gliding or posing, just walking. A dark green dress hugged her soft frame, simple and unpretentious. Her curls framed her face, and her eyes, steady, unhurried, met his without apology. For a heartbeat, he forgot to breathe. She didn't fit into his world, and that was exactly what disturbed him. Miss Richards, he said, standing. Mr. Cole. Her voice was calm, low, confident. No awe, no flattery. Just equal ground. They Saturday. The waiter poured wine, the kind that cost more than a month's rent for most people. She didn't even glance at the label. Instead, she studied him measured, curious, not impressed. So, she began, folding her hands. You're the man who wants to marry me for money. Ethan's jaw twitched. That's one way to put it. I prefer honesty, she replied. It saves time. He leaned back, smirking. You seem to know a lot for someone who hasn't even said yes yet. Khloe tilted her head slightly, eyes sharp. I know enough. I know about your bet, Mr. Cole. I'm not naive. The words cut through the air. A few heads turned nearby, sensing tension. Ethan's expression didn't move, but inside, something like respect flickered. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't playing the game he expected. You know, he said quietly. Most people would have walked away. Most people don't get to name their price, she answered. He raised a brow. And yours is? 6 months, she said simply. No control, no lies, no touch. Her tone didn't waver. It wasn't a request, it was law. Ethan studied her face, looking for fear or greed, but found neither, just calm certainty. Why agree at all? He asked. You don't seem like the type to play along. Khloe smiled faintly. Because you remind me of every man who thinks power buys dignity. And maybe for once, it should cost you something. For the first time that night, he didn't have a comeback. The silence between them was sharp enough to breathe. He reached for his glass, forcing his voice steady. 6 months. Fine. If that's the game, I'll play it. Her eyes softened, though not with warmth. It's not a game, Mr. Cole. It's a boundary. Ethan nodded, masking the stir of unease that rose inside him. You have my word. Keep it, she said quietly. Freedom is the only thing I won't sell. The line landed heavier than he expected. It was simple, almost gentle, but it carried more defiance than any insult. The waiter returned, setting their meals down. Khloe thanked him by name. Ethan noticed she'd read his tag, something he'd never bothered to do. As the evening stretched on, he watched her more than he admitted. The way she spoke, unhurried. The way she didn't reach for her phone once. The way she filled the room without trying. When the bill arrived, she glanced at it, then met his gaze. Don't worry, I won't sell my freedom, but I can pay for dinner. He almost laughed, but stopped. Her sincerity disarmed him. Outside, as they parted, Khloe extended her hand. 6 months, she reminded. He shook it, feeling her confidence like a pulse. 6 months, he echoed. But as she walked away, her words replayed in his mind, echoing louder than the city around him. Freedom is the only thing I won't sell. He didn't know it yet, but that sentence would become the very thing that unraveled him. The wedding was quiet, efficient, and cold, just the way Ethan Cole liked his deals. A notary read the vows like clauses, witnesses signed, cameras flashed once. No flowers, no music, no trembling hands. Just 2 names on paper, and the silence of mutual understanding. Khloe Richards stood beside him, in a simple cream dress that skimmed her curves. No diamonds, no veil, no pretense. She didn't hide her full figure, didn't flinch under the camera lights. Her confidence filled the room louder than any applause. When the pen left the page, she looked up and said softly, Congratulations, Mr. Cole. You're officially married. He managed to smile. To a woman who doesn't believe in love. Perfect match. Outside, rain shimmered across the black car waiting for them. As the door closed, Ethan noticed her shoes' plain leather flats, worn at the edges. He almost commented, but something in her calm stopped him. The penthouse towered above Manhattan, all marble and glass, built to impress. When the elevator doors opened, Khloe stepped out first, her reflection scattering across the windows. You live in a museum, she murmured. Ethan's pride flared. I live in proof of what I've earned. She turned, unruffled. Then it must be heavy to carry. That night, the space between them stretched like the skyline itself, bright, cold, infinite. The next morning began their strange routine. He left early for meetings. She explored the rooms like an observer, not a resident. The housekeeper offered help, but Khloe waved her off with a smile. I'll make breakfast. I like knowing what I'm eating. When Ethan returned, the scent of real food filled the air, coffee, toast, something warm and human. It felt foreign in a place built for silence. Later, he presented her with boxes, couture gowns, designer heels, jewelry that glowed beneath tissue paper. Wear them, he said. You'll need them for events. Khloe glanced at the price tags, then back at him. Why would I need armor for a dinner? It's not armor, it's image. She smiled gently. You're mistaking decoration for worth. He exhaled through his nose, dismissing the sting her words carried. The next night, he invited her to a gala. People will expect us together. I have class tomorrow, she said, wiping paint from her hands. The kids are finishing their murals. Ethan frowned. I'm offering you a seat among people who matter. Khloe looked at him with quiet defiance. They already matter to me. She went to the community art center instead. The cameras caught Ethan alone at the event, charming investors with a practiced smile. Yet beneath the hum of music, he felt something hollow. A single thought crossed his mind. Why was it easier to face strangers than his own wife? One evening, he came home to find her in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, hair undone. She was ladling soup into containers. "For dinner?" he asked. "For the night guard and the concierge," she said. "They've been working late." He blinked. "You don't have to do that." "No one has to," she replied, handing him a bowl. "That's the point." He didn't answer, just watched as she carried food down the hall, her laughter echoing faintly through the sterile walls of his penthouse. Days blurred into weeks. 2 people under one roof, one mastering control, the other disarming it without trying. He began noticing small things. How she left the curtains open to let morning light in. How she never raised her voice. How she could turn even silence into comfort. He caught his reflection one evening and realized he looked different, less polished, more human. Khloe's presence didn't fit his world. But somehow, without permission, it was starting to shape it. 2 universes had collided, his, built on pride, hers on quiet dignity, and neither was ready for what came next. It started with an empty chair. Ethan walked into the penthouse dining room, the table set for 2, candles lit, dinner cooling in silence. The housekeeper avoided his eyes when he asked, "Where's Mrs. Cole?" "She said she had a class tonight, sir." He froze. A class? Outside the glass walls, Manhattan glowed beneath him, but his pride burned hotter. He pulled out his phone. The last message from Khloe read, "Don't wait up. The kids are finishing their final projects." He dialed her number. No answer. Again, still nothing. When she finally returned near midnight, her hair smelled faintly of paint and rain. A smudge of blue streaked across her sleeve. She looked alive, glowing in a way the penthouse never was. Ethan stood waiting, voice low but sharp. "You went to teach?" Khloe set down her bag. "Yes." "You don't need to work anymore," he said, stepping closer. "You're my wife." She looked at him, calm as still water. "That's exactly why I should keep working." He frowned. "You have everything you need here. Why waste time for a paycheck?" Khloe's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Work isn't about money. It's about dignity." He exhaled hard. "Dignity doesn't pay bills." "Huh?" "It pays peace," she said simply. "You should try it." For a second, neither moved. The air tightened between them. Ethan felt something unfamiliar, discomfort, maybe fear. Not of her, but of what she saw in him. He tried again, softer. "I can provide everything for you." "I didn't marry you for everything," she replied. "And you didn't marry me for love. So let me at least keep the one part of myself that's still mine." Her words landed with quiet precision. No anger, no tears, just truth. Ethan turned away, gripping the edge of the marble counter. His reflection glared back from the glass, composed, successful, completely alone. Khloe walked to the kitchen, humming as she reheated her dinner. The small sound filled the room more honestly than any luxury ever had. He watched her from the corner of his eye, the way she moved without hesitation, unashamed of her soft frame or the paint on her hands. She didn't fit his world. She refused to. "Do you ever stop fighting?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "When there's nothing left worth fighting for." That night, the silence was heavier than usual. Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling while the city pulsed far below. For the first time, the rhythm of success felt offbeat. Her words looped through his mind, softer each time. Work isn't about money, it's about dignity. It wasn't defiance that unsettled him, it was how right she was. In a life built on power and obedience, Khloe had given him neither. And somehow, that felt like the first loss he couldn't explain. By dawn, the candles on the dining table had burned down to glass. The smell of cold wax lingered, mingling with the echo of her voice. He had won every battle that ever mattered until tonight. Because tonight, for the first time, Ethan Cole lost in silence. It was past midnight when Ethan Cole woke to the sound of soft movement. The penthouse was quiet, except for the steady hum of the city beyond the glass. He reached for the clock, 2:17 a.m., then noticed a faint glow spilling from the corner of the living room. Khloe sat by the tall window, barefoot, her knees drawn up on the stool. A thin brush moved between her fingers, the rhythm slow and patient. Moonlight mixed with the warm light of a small desk lamp, painting her in shades of silver and gold. On the canvas before her, color bloomed soft blues, pale creams, streaks of yellow rising like dawn. At the bottom of the painting, a line of words curved in her careful handwriting. "Freedom looks like peace." Ethan stopped in the doorway. He didn't say her name, didn't breathe too loudly. Something about the moment felt too fragile to interrupt. Khloe leaned back, studying her work. The reflection of the skyline shimmered across her face, and for the first time, Ethan noticed how calm she looked. No walls, no defenses, just her and the silence. He should have turned away, but he stood there, rooted, caught between curiosity and something softer he couldn't name. When she finally dipped her brush into the water jar, her voice carried across the room, gentle but firm. "Couldn't sleep?" He hesitated. "Neither could you." She smiled without turning. "That's different. I don't paint to sleep, I paint to breathe." Ethan didn't answer. He took a step closer, then stopped, unsure of his own intent. Every deal, every negotiation in his life had rules, outcomes, leverage. But this quiet woman painting peace in his house had none. "I didn't know you painted at night," he said at last. "You don't ask," she replied. Her tone wasn't cruel, it was simply true. He wanted to say something clever, something that would tilt the power back to him. Instead, he found himself looking at her hands, streaked with color, steady, real. After a moment, she spoke again, still facing the canvas. "Do you ever stop proving you're right, Ethan?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" "You chase control like it's oxygen. But all it's ever given you is noise." He opened his mouth to respond, but the words didn't come. She kept painting, slow, deliberate, each stroke softer than the last. He watched her for another minute, then quietly stepped back. She didn't notice, or maybe she did, and let him go. Back in his room, the image wouldn't leave him. That painting, those words, the calm in her voice. The next morning, he found himself standing outside her studio before heading to work. She was teaching a small group of kids with worn shoes and bright eyes. She laughed easily, kneeling to show one how to mix colors. Her plus-size frame bent gracefully, confident and unself-conscious, her joy filling the air like sunlight. Ethan lingered at the doorway. None of the children knew who he was, and for once, that anonymity felt freeing. He noticed how she spoke to the staff, thanking the janitor by name, listening to a parent's story without looking at her phone. Every interaction was human, effortless. That afternoon, when he returned home, the doorman greeted him warmly. "Your wife brought coffee for the night crew again," the man said, smiling. "She's something special." "Woo." Ethan nodded, unable to find a reply. The elevator ride up felt longer than usual. That night, the painting still sat by the window, unfinished but alive. He stood in front of it, tracing the words with his eyes. "Freedom looks like peace." He finally understood why it unsettled him. Because he'd built a life where freedom meant control, and peace meant silence. And she, without trying, was rewriting both. Hoàn hảo. Dưới đây là bản viết lại Part 7, The Fall, Truth Revealed. Khoảng 850 token. Giữ nguyên toàn bộ continuity warm classic, vai phẩy 10, mở đầu bằng những dấu hiệu thay đổi nơi Ethan. Để khi biến cố xảy ra, cú ngã cảm xúc trở nên hợp lý, sâu và đau đúng chuẩn. Valen Universe. The weeks that followed were quiet, too quiet for Ethan Cole. He found himself waking earlier, drawn by the faint smell of paint and coffee from the kitchen. Khloe was always there before him, her hair tied messily, humming while she packed art supplies for her students. She'd leave a cup of coffee beside his laptop every morning, black, no sugar, just the way he liked it. He never asked her to. She never mentioned it. Yet it became a ritual, one small thread in a life he hadn't realized was changing. At work, people noticed something different. He didn't raise his voice as often. He stayed longer in the conference room when staff spoke. One afternoon, his assistant accidentally spilled coffee on an expensive contract. Ethan only smiled, told her to print another copy. The silence that followed in the office was disbelief. When he came home, the lights were softer, warmer. Sometimes he'd find Khloe asleep on the couch, half buried under sketchbooks. He'd drape a blanket over her, pretending it was habit, not care. She noticed the change, not in words, but in moments, the way he started thanking the doorman, the way he stood in her art studio longer than usual. actually listening to the children's laughter. For the first time, she allowed herself to think, maybe he's learning. Tonight was different. Ryan Blake's company was hosting a lavish investor gala. The skyline glittered behind the glass walls, a sea of gold and silver. Ethan arrived in his usual calm armor-tailored suit, sharp smile, but something inside him was unsettled. Khloe stood beside him, elegant in a simple black dress that hugged her soft frame like a whisper of confidence. He had offered to buy her something extravagant. She refused. "You look perfect," he told her quietly before they entered. She had smiled. "I always did. You're just noticing now." Throughout the evening, Ethan found himself distracted watching her instead of the deals, tracing the sound of her laugh instead of the orchestra. When she spoke with other guests, he caught pride flickering in his chest. It was new. It was dangerous. Ryan appeared, a glass of champagne in hand, his grin easy and reckless. "Ethan Cole, my man, you're glowing. What's the secret?" Ethan chuckled. "Good business, that's all." Ryan leaned in. 6 months are almost over. $1 million coming your way, huh? Ethan froze for half a second, then forced a smirk. "Guess I still win, don't I?" It was reflex, defense, pride, habit. The lie rolled off his tongue smoother than truth. He didn't realize Khloe had walked back into the room, standing just behind him, close enough to hear every word. Ryan laughed and clinked his glass against Ethan's. "Still the same man I know, winning till the end." "Oh." Ethan gave a half-hearted grin, but inside, something twisted. He wanted to tell Ryan he was wrong, that the bet didn't matter anymore, that she did. But men like him didn't confess things like that in public. Pride demanded silence. Khloe's hand tightened around her clutch. She didn't move, didn't speak. Her eyes found Ethan's reflection in the mirrored wall ahead. He looked proud. She had believed the bet was behind them, that the man she'd seen change was real. But the glint of arrogance in his smile told her otherwise, or so it seemed. She waited for him to correct Ryan, to say it wasn't true. He didn't. The applause and laughter swelled again, drowning the sound of her heartbeat. She stepped forward slowly. The room shifted, noticing her presence, though she kept her gaze fixed on him. When she reached his table, her voice came steady, low, too calm for the storm beneath it. "You win, Ethan," she said. "Congratulations." Ethan turned, startled. "Khloe, wait." But she was already sliding the silver ring off her finger. The metal gleamed cold under the chandelier light as she placed it gently on the table between them. "For what it's worth," she added, "I really thought you'd stopped keeping score." Ryan's grin faded. The guests pretended not to look, though every eye was drawn to the quiet grace of the woman walking away. Ethan reached out instinctively, his hand hovering over the ring. "Khloe, please." She shook her head once, her eyes wet but unwavering. "You could have lost the bet, Ethan. I would have stayed. But you chose to win." Then she turned and walked through the crowd, the hem of her dress brushing past marble floors, and whispered pity. He stood there, motionless, surrounded by the very people he'd once lived to impress. Their applause resumed, for someone else's success, someone else's toast. But to Ethan, the sound felt hollow, cruel, endless. He looked down at the ring lying in the pool of light. It had begun as proof of control, a game he thought he could dominate. Now, it looked more like a mirror reflecting the emptiness of every victory he'd ever claimed. He picked it up slowly, feeling the faint warmth where her skin had touched it. And in that quiet, glittering room, Ethan Cole finally understood what it meant to win and lose at the same time. Weeks passed. The penthouse grew silent again, colder than before. The city lights flickered outside the glass, but inside, everything felt dim. Ethan Cole had searched everywhere, her studio, her school, the community center, but Khloe was gone. The staff said she had taken a break, somewhere quiet. He couldn't blame her. He had destroyed the only piece she'd ever shared with him. At night, he still caught himself looking at her painting the one she'd left behind. Freedom looks like peace. He hadn't understood those words before. Now, they burned. He stopped attending meetings. He turned down interviews. The board grew restless, but he didn't care. For once, he wasn't chasing victory. He was chasing forgiveness. Then one morning, an idea came. Not from pride, but from remorse. If words couldn't reach her, maybe truth could. A month later, New York buzzed with curiosity. The richest man on Wall Street was hosting an art exhibition, his first ever. The invitation was simple: freedom. When the doors opened, the crowd gasped. Every wall was covered with Khloe Richards paintings, portraits of women in every shape, age, and story. Some were scarred, some smiling, some broken but standing. Each brushstroke carried dignity, not pity. Ethan stood at the center of it all, wearing a black suit, no tie, eyes heavier than they used to be. Reporters murmured, cameras clicked, but the usual arrogance was gone. He looked human. When the lights dimmed, he stepped onto the small stage. The microphone crackled softly. He took a breath, and his voice came quiet, raw. "I married her for a bet," he began. The room fell still. People shifted, confused, waiting for the punchline. None came. He continued, his voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. "But she married me for her freedom, and she taught me what real freedom means: respect." A ripple of silence spread through the audience. Even the photographers lowered their cameras. He looked around the gallery, the faces, the paintings, the memories of a woman who had changed everything without asking for anything. "For years," he said softly, "I thought power meant control. That respect was something I could buy. But she respected people who had nothing to offer her. That's what made her extraordinary." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small silver ring. It glimmered under the light, no longer a prize, just a truth. "This isn't a trophy," Ethan said, voice breaking. "It's a reminder of who I used to be." He walked to the glass case at the center of the hall, a clear pedestal beneath a single spotlight. With careful hands, he placed the ring inside. As the lid closed, the metal caught a final reflection of his face, haunted, changed. The crowd didn't clap at first, they just watched. The sound of silence filled the space, deep and cleansing. Then, slowly, someone started to applaud. Another joined. Soon the room swelled with sound, not admiration, but acknowledgement. Ethan stood there, breathing in the moment. The noise felt different now. Not like victory, like release. He looked up at the mural behind him, Khloe's final work, painted long before the scandal. It showed a woman standing on a shoreline, hair tangled by wind, her hands open toward the horizon. At the bottom, a single line read, "Respect is not something you win, it's something you give." Ethan's throat tightened. For the first time, he smiled, not the practiced smile of a businessman, but the quiet, tired one of a man who finally understood loss. He whispered under his breath, meant only for her, "Wherever you are, Khloe, thank you." And as the crowd kept applauding, he turned away from the stage, leaving the silver ring shining behind him, no longer a symbol of pride, but of redemption. The applause had faded, but the air still hummed with emotion. Cameras flashed as the crowd slowly began to disperse, leaving the gallery filled with soft echoes and the scent of paint and champagne. Ethan Cole stood alone under the white lights, his confession still trembling in the silence he'd created. The silver ring rested behind glass, glinting under its spotlight. For the first time, the room didn't feel empty, it felt honest. And then, a hush. The crowd turned as the glass doors opened. Khloe Richards stepped inside, her silhouette framed by the glow of evening. The sound of cameras rose instantly, reporters whispering her name. She didn't flinch. She walked forward slowly, each step measured, calm and certain. Her eyes found him before anything else did. He froze where he stood, the world shrinking until there was only her, the woman who had broken his arrogance and rebuilt his heart. The light washed over both of them, soft and clean. She stopped a few feet away, studying the display. "You used my work," she said quietly. "All of it." Ethan nodded. "It deserved to be seen. They needed to see what I destroyed." She looked at the ring inside the glass. "And that?" His voice caught. "That's not for display. It's a reminder." For a moment, neither moved. Then he took a small step closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "No contracts," he said. "No games, no bets, just us." Khloe's lips curved soft, sad, but real. She looked up at him, her eyes steady. "You finally sound like yourself." He reached out, hesitant. "Can I?" She glanced at the ring again, the one thing that had once symbolized her humiliation. It now sat in a case surrounded by light, stripped of power, stripped of lies. "Keep it there," she whispered. "So we'll always remember what it cost." Ethan's chest tightened. He nodded, his voice barely audible. "I will." The room held its breath as she extended her hand. He took it, fingers interlacing slowly, reverently. For the first time, their touch wasn't a transaction. It was truth. Together, they turned toward the exit. The crowd parted without a word, letting them pass through like a tide receding. Outside, the last light of sunset spilled across the glass windows, bathing the gallery sign in gold. The reflection shimmered behind them. Freedom, the only deal worth signing. They didn't look back. The city moved around them, alive and loud, but they walked as if the noise had nothing to do with them anymore. The same hands that once closed deals now held onto something rarer peace. He married her for a bet, but she taught him what victory really costs. If this story touched your heart, follow Valen Stories, where power learns to love again, for more tales of love that challenge power and prove that dignity is the truest form of beauty. Thank you for watching.